So this is just going to be a quick updated review on Atomic Heart. I was going to wait till I finished the game, but I've had so many issues I just wanted to make another quick video about it. So in the more time I've spent in this game, I've had a bunch of save files get corrupted, and as any gamer knows, that is kind of a huge problem, just because, first of all, I play on a harder difficulty, so the enemies are pretty hard to defeat, and, honestly, I've died quite a few times. But when I die then, and my save file's corrupted, I end up not being able to go back to the last checkpoint I saved at, and I end up having to automatic or manually load the game further back than where I was at, and I end up having to backtrack like 10 or 15 minutes into the game just to come back to the spot I was already at, just to die, lose, and have to go back those 10 or 15 minutes. And I'd say in the last 5 or 6 hours of me playing this game, that's probably happened over a dozen times. And I've maybe advanced the game like an hour and a half to 2 hours of actual gameplay just because of how many save files have corrupted. Now, I've checked my device that I play on and my storage device as well, and I've ensured that is nothing with my storage device. So that's really very disappointing because that says it's something from the game itself. And that's just kind of an issue you can't really have in games, period, let alone a game like this, but just games in period. Also, the further I've gone into it, the more and more and more it just feels like another Fallout game, which is also really disappointing because, I didn't want to play just another Fallout game. I wanted to play Atomic Heart, a unique, different, standalone kind of a game. Yes, retro vibes with a robot apocalypse or whatever you want to call it, but still, it has so much of a Fallout vibe to it that it's really, really disappointing to play. Also, something else that I'm really disappointed about is I've gone way deep into this game now, like 10 or 12 hours of gameplay, and like maybe two or three characters have had Russian accents. So the problem with that for me is I'm playing Russian characters. I'm playing surrounded by Russian robots. I'm playing in a Russian country. I'm playing in Russian vehicles. The music playing in the background is Russian music. The music happening inside the game itself on radios and things is Russian music. The newspapers, the walls, the ads, everything everywhere is Russian except for the characters. Like, even if it was just a Russian accent, like, I understand you can't have the character speak Russian just because, Americans or English speaking people make up such a majority of it, or English is just such a major language in the world, whether it's a first or second language. But still, to not have a Russian accent on Russian characters seems really disappointing. Now, there might be a plot twist at the end, and it turns out I'm an American, and all the robots and everything else that have been around, and all these other people with Russian names and everything, they're all Americans, and some of them are British, and who knows. But it's just really disappointing that there hasn't been any Russian accents. Maybe it'll get explained at the end of the game. But so yeah, so far, that's what's been going on. There's been a lot of issues as well with like boss fights and things. So like one of the first boss fights I got into. Again, I'm playing on a hard difficulty, but basically the boss is almost impossible to defeat because the dodge doesn't work very well as some other mechanics of, avoiding the attacks the boss gives or deals or whatever you want to say. But there's also other issues with like being able to, how do I say this properly? Being able to craft and upgrade your weapons, craft new weapons, craft ammo, etc. It takes so many resources in order to be able to do it, to get better, more efficient weapons, to be able to advance further into the game, that like right away at the beginning, to go through the beginning of the game, you're so weak that you have to dump all of your resources into upgrading your weapons. If you hadn't done that, you would have had enough to upgrade and build new weapons. But because you're so underpowered at the beginning and there's so many enemies you have to go through, you really do just have to mass upgrade your weapons, the base weapons. The problem with that being is now all those resources that you spent on upgrading, you don't have to craft new guns because it takes the same resources to upgrade guns as it does to craft guns. And then resources are kind of scarce, And most of them, to get them, you have to like explore around areas completely filled with enemies. And I don't know if it's just for me, but the sneaking ability that sort of exists in the game does not work properly. And robots constantly see me while I'm in hiding or out of their line of sight or something like that. So I end up not being able to perform, assassinations, so to speak, on them, like hidden attacks. And that poses a major problem as well, because that means that I really just have to mass fight robots and enemies. And with that being the case, and being super underpowered, I can't really do anything. So I have to upgrade my weapons, which means I don't have those resources, which means when I do find those resources, I end up having to spend them on upgrading the weapons, which means I don't have those resources to build new weapons. And because the resources are so scarce in the game, I mean, they're not like completely scarce. There's a lot of areas where you can get them. It's just that you need so many of them that it feels like they're scarce. So it ends up being really difficult to craft these weapons. So you just end up being underpowered, in my experience so far, in like 12 hours of gameplay, the entire time you're playing the game. And feeling so underpowered is really frustrating. Now, it's not like I want to be overpowered where it's just like I'm on God mode and I can go in there and just decimate everything in my path. That is not the experience I'm looking for either. I just also don't want to be stuck so lowly powered that I can't beat my way through situations if I have to, with just some careful planning and some well plotted out attacks. So that's just, it's really frustrating. Some other issues as well is like the shield ability does not always work properly when you use your shield ability. Some of the special abilities on the weapons don't always work the way they're supposed to. Sometimes they like glitch out and don't fire, or the range that they're supposed to have just kind of disappears when you try and fire the special ability, and it just ends up not working. Some issues like that. Some other issues I've ran into is having components and stuff break off of weapons that they're not supposed to, or items in my inventory just disappearing even though I haven't used them. Some stuff like that. And all of these in total are major issues, and it's really frustrating me. So anyways, I'm just making this video because I want to make people aware, because all I've seen so far, because I've watched other reviews to see if other people have said anything about this, to see if it's just my experience. But so far, everything I've seen from everyone else is just glowing reviews about how revolutionary this game is, how unique it is, how extraordinary it is, how it's nothing like anyone else has ever played and no other game that's ever existed before. Just a completely amazing experience and everything's fantastic. And that's just not true, in my case at least. So I just wanted to make people aware, and also to see if anyone else is having a bad experience with it. Because honestly, this is really frustrating. I'm glad I got it for free off of Game Pass, but it is still very disappointing. I'm glad I didn't spend money on it, but before you all go out and spend any money on this game if you want to, because I know of at least 2 people who've asked me personally what I thought of the game, because they wanted to buy it themselves and they wanted to see what my opinions on it were. So yeah, just wanted to let people know that as much as this game has been hyped up and every other content creator out there is saying it's good, it really isn't, at least in my experience. It's been absolutely horrible. And touching on that, 2 days after the game released to my system, it had an update. Now, if your game is completely fixed and good to go out the bat, I wouldn't expect there to be an update. Plus, with what I read, the update was to fix bug crashes, save game file corruptions, etc., to repair some other nodes, to update some graphics systems, to improve the AI abilities, a bunch of stuff like that. And that was a 15 gigabyte update. And that's a massive update to repair some massive issues right out the door on the game. Now, I'm glad they got it done fast, but to have a game that comes out and it's so not finished that you have to add a 15 gigabyte update the next day, it's just really negative looking on the creators. Now, not saying the creators are doing a horrible job. It could be issues from, Microsoft or wherever. But again, to have a 15 gigabyte update a day after it releases, that's kind of lame, in my opinion. So anyways, feel free to check out the game. Feel free to go look at it. So watch some reviews, watch some other people. But I would be very cautious about buying the game yourself personally, as I have had so many game crashes and issues. I might wait another couple of months to let the updates and everything happen, to let these problems get sorted out and weeded out, and get the game then if everything's fixed. But as it sits right now, I probably wouldn't buy it personally. But yeah, so far graphics are great, it looks great, the combat and the gameplay is kind of fun. It's just most of the time the crashes or the extreme difficulty or always being underpowered kind of overshadows the fun in the game, and it just ends up being really frustrating.